On this episode of What's Going On with Shipping, the Jones Act. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to this episode. A lot going on here regarding the Jones Act, and it's only a matter of time till you have to deal with an issue like the Jones Act when a storm such as Hurricane Fiona hits in Puerto Rico. Did a video yesterday where I kind of broke down a lot of this issue, but there's been new information released since then. So I just want to contextualize what's going on here. So first off, the Jones Act. This is the Merchant Marine Act of 1920. Now, the Merchant Marine Act of 1920 is a whole massive document that included a vast variety of things. But when people say the Jones Act, they usually refer to just Section 27 of the Jones Act. And what that says is that to carry cargo between U.S. ports, you have to be a U.S. flagged, U.S. owned, U.S. crewed, and U.S. built vessel, and that restricts a lot of foreign flag vessels from moving cargo between U.S. ports. The idea here is to prevent foreign ships from dominating our trade and to ensure there is a U.S. maritime industrial base. Now, in 1920, that was really important because we'd just come out of World War I. We had lost our ability to trade internationally because the ships we used were German and British and French and Italians, and they were all busy fighting World War I, killing each other. And so our economy suffered. And fortunately, we had a large domestic fleet we can rely on. Now, the Jones Act is a 102-year-old law that needs some revision. And I'm the first one to sit there and say, we need to go ahead and revise the Jones Act. We need to go ahead and have changes put in place. But the problem here is that every time a situation like this comes up, everybody wants to just repeal it, waive it, and forget it. But that opens up huge ramifications for not just Puerto Rico, but the entire United States trade, everything from ferries to the inland waterways and American domestic shipbuilding. So we need to reform this law. We really do. And so I don't want anybody to think for a moment I'm not, I'm one of these staunch, the Jones Act will remain, stone only. And at the same time, I'm not one who talks about repealing it and let's hope for the best, because there are a lot of people who feel that way. A lot of them are paid very well to feel that way in lobby groups. And they are more than willing to get out there in front of the media, and they have, to voice their opinion from their well-funded think tanks, because, again, groups want them to have that opinion. I don't have that opinion. I'm not in the industry. I am a former merchant mariner who's a maritime historian at a college. So I got no skin in this game whatsoever. I just study this. My doctoral dissertation was on the role of the merchant marine in national defense. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into the story. If you're new to the channel, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. All right. We're going to head over here to Marine Traffic. And Marine Traffic is a site that tracks vessels via their AIS transponders. A couple of things that a lot of people are using AIS right now, but they don't understand it for a variety of reasons. Number one, AIS is a bit spotty around Puerto Rico right now because of the power outages. You have to relay these images ashore and then uplink them out. And so lots of times you lose data of vessels in and around. So this is Puerto Rico, and right off the coast here is the vessel in question. This is it right here. This is the G.H. Parks, a Marshall Island flag tanker that arrived off the southern coast of Puerto Rico yesterday with 300,000 barrels of diesel fuel. Now, the issue with this ship is it's Marshall Island flagged, not U.S., and it sailed from a U.S. port, Texas City. And technically, it cannot go into a U.S. port and offload its cargo under Section 27 of the Merchant Marine Act. Now, you can get a waiver issued by the Department of Homeland Security or Department of Defense to waive this, but the issue here is that there is currently no waiver for this vessel. So let's look at the port here for a second, because this is one of the issues that I have right now. So 300,000 barrels of diesel fuel sitting off the port. You would sit there and say, okay, obviously there is a problem. Now, let's be clear. Here is the port right here. This red dot, red represents tankers. There's a tanker sitting right there in the port. Again, we're not getting a reading on that vessel because it's in the port and the local link-ups to them are down because the power's out. But the vessel that's in here is this one, the Coastal Reliance, a articulated tug and barge operated by Crowley Maritime. And the reason I know that is because I got Twitter. And if you come over here to Twitter, one of the things you'll see right here is that Crowley Maritime in their Twitter page features this vessel right here. This is a photo by port engineer Andrew Sullivan from 14 hours ago, so yesterday. As Puerto Rico recovers from Hurricane Fiona, Crowley's ATB, Coastal Reliance, and 550-4, that's the tug. That's the barge. Served Puerto Rico today and Sunday with fuel near Aguirre, and then in Guayanilla, I'm going to get this word right eventually, to help provide diesel on the island. So exactly what you want, right? This is what we want, right? We want this happening. There's a U.S. flag tug and barge there providing oil and diesel to the facilities. That, again, is this vessel right here that we see in the, excuse me, in the report, the Coastal Reliance. And if you go to the port, by the way, if you kick up here on the port, you can kick up the port and see. And one of the things you see here is vessels in port, expected arrivals. So if you come in here for vessels in port, there are 13 vessels sitting in the port right now. Now, a lot of these are just tugs that are used to maneuver barges, excuse me, barges and craft in and around the port. But you can basically pull up exactly what is in the port. And if you see right here, you get this imagery. You see them all right here. And one of them you see here is the Confidence. The Confidence is sitting off the port right now. Here is Confidence right here, sitting off the port. A Liberian flagged vessel that just came in from the Virgin Islands. See here from St. Croix, it arrived. Now, there's a weird catch in the Jones Act that makes the Virgin Islands exempt from the Jones Act. And this had to do with the fact that this law was written in 1920 and the Virgin Islands came over to the United States in 1917 from Denmark. And so there was an exclusion written in to keep them out because of their connection with Denmark and because there was some Danish vessels that operated between the islands. Again, this law desperately needs revising. But the Confidence can come in. It doesn't need a waiver like the Parks. Again, come back over here, and if you look at vessels in the port here, let's do expected arrivals coming in. Guess what? There's a tanker coming in. There's another tanker that's coming in, due in. Here it is right here, the UACC Mononoma. All of a sudden, we've broken into a Sesame Street episode here. The Mononoma is coming in from the Netherlands. It is due in at, 12 o'clock local time. And so here's another tanker coming in. You don't need a waiver for the Parks. You've got a U.S. flagged ATB in the port, the Coastal Reliance. You've got the Confidence in from the Virgin Islands. You have the Mononoma. Again, I just can't help but get into a Sesame Street thing here. Off the coast, it's coming in from the Netherlands, which raises the issue then, why is this an issue? Why are we shouting here about a Jones Act waiver? And I think it has a lot to do with people not understanding what is going on here. So this is David Begnaud. He is a reporter for CBS Morning, CBS News, and he is really the one who kicked this thing off in full force, along with another local reporter on the ground in Puerto Rico. And every story I've seen has linked back to him. And so he's been reporting on this, and he has taken this issue and ran with it, which is great. Exactly what you want a reporter to do. The problem I have with what David's doing is he's getting one side of the story, but not the other side of the story. So, for example, last night he did an Instagram post where he had somebody come on, a Jones Act expert. Now, when they say a Jones Act expert, that usually means someone who hates the Jones Act. And let me tell you about how evil it is and how it's caused all the world's evils. Most Jones Act experts will tell you that if you repeal it, again, you're going to have rainbows and unicorns and the world will be much better. What they don't ever talk about, again, is, number one, well, wait a minute, other countries don't have the Jones Act. Why have their merchant marines declined worse than ours? There are many factors at play for the decline of the U.S. and other merchant marines. It's not just the Jones Act. But anyway, this is the target they want to focus on, and it's the target du jour. So David talked with the managing director of Peerless Oil. This is one of the oil firms right there in southern Puerto Rico. And so I'm going to let him talk about this because I think his discussion here is interesting, along with that of the managing director.
Are you the one who requested that the ship come to Puerto Rico with the diesel?
Well, we request our supplier that based on the impact that the Hurricane Fiona had in our island, which is kind of similar to what happened after Maria. There was an entire blackout to see if there was a cargo in the vicinity of the island that can come earlier. And that supplier, after the hurricane on Tuesday, filed for a petition for a waiver of the Jones Act, and because the cargo was coming anyway to the Caribbean. So they did it in a way to help the island, and we also did it that way. In some sense, there is a need for fuel in the island, and if the waiver was granted, then we are able to discharge the cargo. If the waiver is not granted, then there is a cargo coming on the 30th of September to the island, which is scheduled. So this was done in good faith, trying to help the island like we did last time after Hurricane Maria, and nothing more than that. I mean, we're trying to help go through the processes of the law, and asking to the proper authorities for the waiver. I mean, the waiver was applied by the supplier, not by us. And at this moment, I'm sure that the government, local authorities are on top of that, trying to help because they understand there is a need for the fuel. And right now, I believe we have done the most we can do, which is tell the government that there was a cargo in the vicinity, that it could help us to ease all these problems that we have right now with a blackout that is still 40%, and people is on the need on diesel. So if the cargo is not able to get in, we continue to allocate the product based on the demand that we have from our contracted clients, and we will wait until the 30th to have a cargo that which is already scheduled.
So Mr. Vasquez talks about the fact that he contracted with a supplier, a broker, to provide fuel for them. And my issue, again, isn't with him. It's not with Peerless in doing this. But the broker they went to knew they were getting a cargo out of Texas City that could not be landed in Puerto Rico because of the Jones Act. And the question really becomes is, did they work to get this waiver beforehand? Because there's conflicting reports right now. Some saying the waiver started, some didn't. Some believe it just started when the ship arrived off the port. So it's unclear about that. The other issue is, why go to Texas City to get 300,000 barrels of diesel fuel when you can get diesel fuel throughout the Caribbean? To tell you the truth, there are ships sitting right now in San Juan that came from Colombia. That's 900 miles away. From Guadalupe, that's 300 miles away. St. Croix is only a couple of hundred miles away. But as he mentioned here, this cargo is destined for another Caribbean port. So what I think is happening is BP and the broker saw an opportunity to dump a load of 300,000 barrels of diesel into Puerto Rico, go back, get another load, and make a return delivery in the Caribbean, get 2 quick runs, make money. They're not altruistic oil companies. Let's be clear about this, okay? They're not doing this because they're nice people. They're doing it to generate profits. And again, there are other ships arriving. Vasquez goes on to sit there and say that there's not another ship coming till the 30th. That's not true. I just showed you that there's an ATB in port right now. There's a Liberian flag vessel off the coast right now that can come in from the Virgin Islands. And then there's another one coming in from across the ocean that arrives today. So there are other tankers coming in. Again, my whole issue with this is that they're generating hysteria for a Jones Act waiver when there shouldn't be hysteria for a Jones Act waiver, because oil and diesel are getting in. They're getting delivered. He never once says what his levels of diesel are in his storage facilities. Yes, there's rationing going on because the issue here, according to the U.S. Coast Guard and all the news agencies on the ground, is that the ports are wide open, that cargo is flowing into the ports without an issue, but however, getting out of the ports into the inland transportation around the island, that's the issue. That's the issue. And my biggest problem I have with this whole story is it takes away from what should be the story here, is the fact that we don't adequately prepare for hurricanes in this country. This happens every friggin' year. And why is it we don't take a reserve ship, the U.S. military, through the Department of Transportation, the Ready Reserve Force, under the Maritime Administration, has a fleet of vessels that sit along the U.S. coast, Gulf Coast, U.S. East Coast, that we can load every spring and summer with disaster relief supplies, water, generators, tents, gasoline, diesel fuel, everything you could possibly need. Load the vessel to the gills. And when a hurricane happens, you sail it out of port, you get in the wake of the hurricane right behind it, and when the hurricane comes ashore, the ship arrives right behind it, and it can now offload relief cargo by air, by helicopter, taking it off the deck of the ship, or by boat, and land it ashore, because where that hurricane comes ashore is where you're going to need help. It's also the most destructive area that's hit. It will have the roads and infrastructure ripped apart, and the best way to do it, to provide aid, is from the sea, because that's the way the hurricane came from. We're going to see it right now in Florida with Hurricane Ian. Why is this not an issue? Instead, what we're doing here is arguing about a Jones Act waiver for a ship that's not really needed here. And let's be clear. Again, I'll say this for the 10th time. If there is really a critical need for diesel fuel and that ship's sitting off the coast, land it. Deal with the waiver and the fine afterwards. Land the cargo, get the diesel, and go with it. But they're not, because again, what we know, and I have talked to tugboat operators in and around the area, Crowley has posted this, the Coast Guard's posted this, news agencies have posted this, is that the ports are wide open and goods are moving in and out of it. This is a manufactured issue to raise the Jones Act to a national hysteria, to get a waiver for it and eventually a repeal of it. That's what they're trying to do. And as I said before, we need to reform this. We need all the players involved in this at the table, coming up with a new maritime strategy for this country, except for one written 102 years ago. It needs to be updated. It needs to be changed. But understand, the Jones Act isn't the reason for all your woes, no matter what the paid lobbyist will tell you. If you repeal the Jones Act, it'll be rainbows and unicorns. No, because other countries don't have the Jones Act, and their merchant marines are a lot smaller than ours. There's a lot that went into the decline of the U.S. merchant marine. Don't buy into the hype that it's caused by one issue. I'm a historian. No thing in history happens because of one thing. There's a series of them. All right. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos when they come out. Leave a comment. I'm sure I'll get a comment. I got called an imperial dunce. I'm sure I'll get some other comments like that. Sorry. Give it a thumbs up, share it across social media, and if you can, contribute, not to me, but to the people in Puerto Rico and the people in Florida that are about to get hit by a hurricane. Give to the Red Cross, give to aid agencies, give to groups that can provide immediate aid to them right now, because they need it. Until our next video, this is Sal signing off.